Hey everybody, this is JP. Let's jump right into it. Today we are looking over cues in a film score, and we're just going to talk about managing these cues and keeping track of things. So the first thing I want to point out is that this is the end of my writing process. I've already written all the notes and all of the music is pretty much set. So now I'm here mixing, and what I've done is clearly made these full length of the cue as opposed to chopped up like you would normally write with. And this is purely visual, so that when I'm zoomed out really far or looking up at the top of the window here where you can see the whole project, I want to know where all the cues are in their entirety. And I want to know which instruments are playing in which cue, right? So even if I only have, an instrument playing for, I think this piano here, it's only playing at the very end of the cue, I am still making it a full length just so I can see everything from a macro perspective. I find it works very well for me. There are 1.5 million ways to mix a film cue. And when you're by yourself and you don't have a ton of time, you don't have a lot of budget, and you don't have a mixer that you're going to send multitracks to, it might be worth considering not printing multitracks. And what I've done here is I actually have put all of my outputs for VEP and Ensemble Pro directly under the MIDI tracks that they are hooked up to. In this way, I can see, exactly kind of what's going on. Another thing you're probably noticing is this little dip here. The reason I put this dip here is the same reason I make this full length. It's so I can see where the cue starts and the cue ends, and so that I can adjust just basic levels. Like obviously this is not very intricate. There's not a lot of fader action here, but it's just something so that I've got a baseline. And I set this up a little earlier in the writing stage because I wanted to somewhat pre-mix. Now when I look at the whole project, I see, okay, well, I got a cue section here, and this is the volume I have it set here. It's different from this, it's different from this, and this and that. Something else to consider if you're doing multi-tracks and you're doing VEP and Ensemble Pro, you're just adding a lot of processing power for your computer to do. So, I mean, you could take all of the multi-tracks and put them into a different project. That's a great solution as well. And I've done that where I've moved them into Pro Tools and done my mix there. And if I had a lot of time and money, on this project, maybe I would do that as well. Something I'm thinking about is also, okay, if I want to make a change after I've done a little bit of mix, I want to change some notes, I want to move something around, I can do that very easily now. As opposed to having to go back into this, reprint a multitrack, drag it into the other project, close and open VEP and Ensemble Pro 2 or 3 times or whatever to get it right. It's all right here. And so with that in mind, I'm only printing stems. Go to my outputs here. I'm only printing stems for this project here. Again, if I had money for a mixer, if I had a ton of time on my hands, I might do it differently. But for right now, this is how I'm doing it, and I'm going to show you how I've made it the most efficient for me, because there are a ton of things I had to do to kind of like get this set up. Otherwise, it would have been a nightmare. So one of the most nightmarish things about this is let me open up all my folders. You see we have a ton of empty tracks here, a ton of empty outputs, all the way up and down the template. Now, it's not a huge template. It's 500 tracks, and that includes outputs and things like that, right? It's not a huge template, but we still have a lot going on. So I want to see just what's in the queue. So I'm going to click a preset to show me just the tracks between the locators. And I think that's actually here. So it's this shortcut. Now, that's cool. That showed me all the tracks with data. So all my MIDI tracks are there, which is what we want. And we still have all these empty outputs. And unfortunately, with the Project Logical Editor, you can't just hide these device tracks. And so let's go to container type, or is this media type? All right, device. Let me just select them. Pretty sure these are all device tracks, right? These outputs, VN Ensemble Pro outputs. So if it's a device and let's say property is not set, is not empty, and position is, you know, inside the cycle, then select it. Hold on, let me deselect everything real quick and let's try it again. And all right, so it's not going to do everything because it's saying everything is empty, right? And even if I, you know, put a bunch of shit here, it's going to do the same thing. No, deselect. Okay, so that sucks, right? I wish it could just tell what has data here, or, you know, in these ones where I've put the dips, I put the dips on the tracks that are playing. It would be nice if I could, you know, stretch the locator and it would tell me exactly, you know, who's playing. And it won't, so we have to do it ourselves. And the way I've come up with that is another preset. And I saved it here for this film that I'm working on, and it's a doozy, so let's go through it. Okay, media type is a device, and the name is equal to solo VLA SF. So this track, it is going to select this track and it's going to hide it. So yes, I went through every single cue and I wrote down every single output that I have, and I selected the ones that are playing. And I did the same for my groups and effects. Although the names are similar, so I didn't have to put as many for the groups and effects. Now, again, it's not a huge template. This is like, what, 120 outputs maybe? It could be a lot worse. It could be a lot more complicated, but it's going to make it super easy to see all my tracks and see all of my outputs. And then we've got my effects and we've got my stems. And the way to double check, by the way, because you know, you might click a wrong one or, you know, forget to add one, is you will always see the MIDI tracks, because this is gonna this preset is going to make the selection, put locators to selection. It's going to show every track on the map. It is going to now change it to only show the MIDI tracks that have data within the locators. And then it's going to show all these guys here, because for some reason those will get hidden. And then it's going to add all, these are just the outputs, remember? So it's just going to add the outputs. And after that, it's going to hide everything that doesn't have an X, and I'll talk about how that works in a second. And it's also going to close some folders that got opened. So you're going to see all the MIDI tracks that are in place. So you can just go down the line. All right, those go to the same one. So see here how there's 2 MIDI tracks and 1 output. You just double check. All right. Another way to check is if you just take everything here and you mute everything, you know, you mute all these. And if you press play and you hear anything, obviously something got messed up. And you can go through and listen to the whole cue in silence if you really want to check everything. Okay, so I love this. This has been really helpful. If you had a physical mixer and you sync it to, you know, the project window, then you can see just the outputs, right? Because in the mixing window, you can also filter out the MIDI tracks. So you could mix this, and it would be really nice. Here, I'll open up. I have a preset here again, and I'll show you that. Where this is just the this is just what's here, right? Look at this. Now I can mix just what's there. And if I wanted to, I could also do this, which is every single track, but this is not synced. And this, by the way, I'm setting up with this workspaces thing here. This deserves its own video, but it's a different mix window. See, this is mixer 2, and this is mixer 4. Mixer 4 is synced to the project window, Mixer 2 is not. So this way you can, you know, set up a physical device and mix properly. And I found that this has worked really well. But let me go back through the Project Logical Editor preset here and show you a little bit more about how this works. So this is looking for a device with the name equal solo VLASF, and to get that I just, you know, copy and paste all the outputs, and it's gonna select that and then hide it. And if you put an X in front of it, it does not exist on the track list. You could set this up as a template, right? You just have an initial and then you just add an X Q by Q. And yeah, templates change as you go, right? Names will change, outputs will change. And so I don't want to be stuck with this if I change, like, for instance, if I don't use Hollywood Winds ever again and I want to change to Berlin Winds, you know, I only have to change one of these after I reroute everything, right? So it's still going to suck to do that, but I don't want to have to change every single thing in the studio setup for the, you know, Project Logical Editor. I actually have on my touchscreen, I have a bunch of buttons set up for each cue. And yeah, just for this project, they're all set for a specific cue, but I'm planning on in the future setting it up so that instead of cue numbers, it's actually kind of like a memory location number. And then that will never change, and all you have to do is, you know, change the preset in Project Logical Editor, and then you never have to touch your generic remote again. And that way you can have it set to a touch screen, and you can just like change the name on the button, and they're all set up to the same thing every time. And so there's like a lot of work that goes into this that's not necessarily, you know, music making or mixing, right? And it's about kind of setting it up for the future. So just want to show off a little bit more. You see this one only has 2 tracks, 2 outputs, and it's good to go, right? This one has some more. Now, if I want to edit anything in here, example, sorry, let me see this one. It's not always best to, you know, have it all in one, you know, event like this. Like when I wrote this, it was definitely more like, yeah, chunk. But luckily this version looks pretty much the same. You know, if I wanted to, I could write it in here. I could break it up again. It's really not a big deal. Again, this is the end of the process here, so hopefully I don't have any big edits to work on anyway. And then I'm going to print stems, you know, just these outputs one at a time. So I had a lot of fun with this. I hope this is something you find interesting. Maybe you want to give it a try. If you have another way of mixing in Cubase with Vienna Ensemble Pro and you don't want to do multi-tracks, or you've got just like this killer way to do it, you know, I am all ears.